Unless, Al, there's something you want to say first before Sherry gets into the numbers?
No, I don't want to mess Sherry up.
Okay.
She has been neck deep in this budget for
I know.
2 days.
Wow.
All right, Sherry, we'll turn it over to you.
Tonight, we're going to go over the golf course budget.
Okay. So which sheet do you want us to start with first?
If you'll look at this, I gave you two stapled handouts.
Okay.
You look in the upper left-hand corner. We're going to go over the golf course revenues first.
Okay.
So,
Whenever you're ready, Sherry.
okay. Our revenues are based on the fact that we have an average annual rounds of golf is played at the golf course is 14,000 rounds.
Okay.
Now, and 80% of that occurs in what we call the season, which is October through April, is when 80% of that happens. And you guys get the reports every month for the golf course, for the rounds of golf. So we know that our rounds are down. So when we built the budget for the revenues, we took that into consideration
Okay.
and really went through it and thought that we should reduce it a little bit. But there were areas that Robbie came up with that he decided that he could increase. But if you'll look, you'll see that you're going to see a variance amount of $6,372 in reduction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, part of that is his pro shop sales. They increased. We increased it. He is budgeted at $55,000 this year. We increased it $5,000 to $60,000. Currently, as of April, he already had over $54,000 worth of sales for the season.
Okay.
So he felt, pretty good about bumping that up about $5,000 to take care of maybe some of the deficit that we did see.
Okay.
In his tournament fees, he's done excellent this year. He did move that up from $28,080 to $32,400. And that's another $4,982, I believe, or $4,320. He provided you a tournament list. I forget how many tournaments were on
There's
there.
35.
This is so the Clewiston Golf Course tournament schedule for 2018 to 2019 has how many?
35.
35 tournaments?
Mm-hmm.
And he sees an average of about 1,080 players a year for those tournaments.
Okay.
So
Okay.
now the green fees, when we talk about how reducing our we've seen a reduction in our play. Not huge, but there is a reduction. So we do have our green fees. This year they were budgeted at $80,000, and we reduced them to $75,000.
Okay.
And also in line with that is our cart fees. We reduced those about 4%, from $228,890 to $219,500. $219,500.
Okay.
And it's the capital improvement fee that reduced as well to reflect those revisions. So he does have a
So there's a reduction in the estimated revenues. Okay.
yes. Membership dues, those stayed, they're pretty steady, they stay the same. The snack sales, his sales in the pro shop, they maintain. He sells beer, snacks, hot dogs, those are all, our budget didn't change
Okay.
from one to the, one year
Robbie?
from the next.
How many year-round members are there?
How many year-round members are there?
Yes.
If you include U.S. Sugar, because they buy, I couldn't really give you an accurate number. I can give you a good estimation. You'd probably say with them being with that membership, you'd have to say there's probably about 100.
And then the part-time members,
The
Seasonal members,
right?
all in all, when it's all, that's about 190.
And Robbie, I know that Sherry just mentioned the tournaments. Well, we have the schedule for this year for 2018-19. And I think several years ago you gave us a breakdown of the tournaments and how much was raised for each of those tournaments. Do you don't have an updated list on that? I didn't think to ask
I
ahead
don't,
of time.
I can get that
Yeah.
done for you.
I'm curious to see. I think it was a couple $100,000 or close.
I think it was around 150 that it returned back in the community
Okay.
for scholarships and fundraisers and.
And maybe I was thinking about the fundraiser included in that figure. So, but actual tournaments is about. I'm just wondering how much each of these nonprofits are raising to give back. I know for the Rotary Club is the scholarships, for the high school. But I was just curious to see what those numbers look like since there's more tournaments now than there has been in the past. So if you could get that for us, I'd appreciate
Sure.
it. Okay.
Yeah, there's 12 new, my 2
I know it
years,
doesn't impact your budget. I'm just curious because of the benefit to the community.
My 2 years here, there's 12 new events.
Okay.
So I'm averaging about 6 new tournaments a year adding to the schedule, so.
Okay. All right. Sherry.
We're running out of dates too. If you have too many tournaments, the members get upset
Yeah.
because they can't play
Right.
on. It takes the golf course up. So there's a balance,
Right.
and I'm not sure he can run many many more tournaments. He's pretty busy right now.
Yeah, because it's mostly on Saturday, correct? Okay. Yeah.
So the proposed revenues for the golf course, they're at $556,245. And I will say that included in that is the contribution line. The majority of that, as you know, we have an annual tournament every year which supports the operations of the golf course. It's the Nelson Fairbanks tournament. And we do that with U.S. Sugar. They help put that on for us. And it provides about $35,000 to the city to support the operating of the golf course annually.
Okay. And that's listed here in the revenues. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So last year's revenue went $562,617. That was the revenue last year, and so we are proposing $556,245 this year, which is a reduction of $6,372.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else as far as when you look at the actual account summary? Is there anything else that you need to point out on the revenue side?
It is not.
Okay. All right. Any questions on the revenues? Okay. Expenses.
You have your expenses? Okay, everybody has their expenses in front of them?
We do. We're ready when you are.
Yes. We will see a total reduction of $143,127 from last year to this year. Part of that, however, is the capital, the loan for the equipment. So overall, you're going to see, if you don't take the debt service and the capital into consideration, you're going to see a 3% increase. We'll start off with the personnel. Personnel for this year is at $441,560. That's the salaries and the fringe. It went up 6%. And as we all know, the reason for that is it includes a revision of the staff that reflects the supervisor of turf grass, where we hired the individual that was a contractor. And as we get further down, you'll see the reduction that came out of contractual services, the $12,000, and then you'll see a variance in the salaries, which is $13,610. Well, $12,000 of that, you take that $12,000 and it kind of clears that out, and the rest of the variance there is due to, of course, your merits. And then, so overall, we've got a 6% increase. Figured into that, as we know, is the health insurance and the workers' comp. We budgeted the health insurance at 20% increase because we don't know what those numbers are yet. And we just wanted to be safe and figure in the 20%. And then as well, the workers' comp, we budgeted that at a 15% increase.
Okay. All right, and now, when do we expect to hear on the health insurance and on the workman's comp?
I'm not sure. I'll check with them tomorrow. I haven't heard from the league, and
Okay.
called me last week with a question, but I haven't got any numbers from them yet.
Okay. All
I
right.
think they're waiting to see who comes out first.
Well, I mean, if we can find out as soon as possible. I mean, I know tonight's one workshop, and you've been using that 20% increase on insurance, and I see a 15% insurance expense budgeted for workman's comp. But as soon as we can find out about that,
Oh, certainly.
it would help us, and before September.
Oh, yes. We'll have all of that revised.
Okay.
I just don't have it's kind of hard to gauge that. So I've been figuring it in, and I just prefer to be on the,
Right,
I'm
absolutely.
shooting high, hoping it'll be
Right.
low.
Right, but so there's the health insurance, the workman's comp, and the property casualty insurance. So we're looking at that information to come in, hopefully before mid-August.
Hope so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but if you could check with the insurance rates, that would be great on that.
Now, I did find out about our dental.
Okay.
Our dental insurance has increased to 7%. We're going to see. We did not see an increase last year, so it will go from $429.12 an employee to approximately $460.
Okay.
And there will be the other benefits as far as the life insurance go. They won't see any.
Can I ask on that dental insurance? Is there another plan we can look at as well? I mean, I don't know how often. I know we compare plans every once in a while and we get options, but we're going to do that again on the dental as well as the health. Isn't that included in
Yeah,
part
I
of
had
it?
an increase in dental. Usually, if there is an increase, she looks for alternates. But
Okay.
I'll check with Gloria and see if
Okay, but just in case, I
some
mean,
comps.
it might be that that's still the best plan for the money, but I think we should look at different options. Okay, Sherry, I'm sorry.
And I would like to say I got distracted when we talked about the turf grass supervisor. We did not increase our employees there. We did have an employee transfer that went to the recreation department. And this position came about because this gentleman had the credentials for taking care of the grass as far as spraying the chemicals and what have you. And he also, it's a combination job that he will be also, that position also takes care of the groundskeeping as well. But he does have the licensing
That we need.
is needed,
Right.
yes, for the turf. And 90% of his salary is included in this budget, and 10% is included in our Sugarland Park budget.
Because he goes out there and does the maintenance as well, the turf
Yes.
management. Okay, all right.
About 10% of his time.
I
is-
appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me and go over all of that. Thank you.
Okay.
So operating budget, you'll see a 3% increase. A 1% decrease, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the total. Total operating is $337,978. As we said, we took out the contractual services that we were paying for the turf. We took those out of there. Operating, the change reflects, we tweaked, what we did is, since Robbie increased his pro shop sales, 80% of that is cost of goods sold. So we also revised the expense for his sales by about $4,000 so that it would be in line with the revenues.
Okay.
And then I also made another revision in here just to point out, on our sale of our beer, which is other inventory, I transposed. It's overall, I believe it's like a $13,000 sale, and I had $5,950 in last year that I needed to increase. It should have been $7,150. So the profit, I transposed the numbers. So I'm simply revising it.
Okay. And that's where that's on what line?
And that is, and I meant to point that out.
It's on snacks, soft drinks?
The
Oh, no, the
one
second.
underneath that on
Okay.
page 3.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, page 3.
Yes,
item.
if you'll see previously, I had 5,850. I'm pointing out a mistake that I made where I transposed. I should have had that. It should have been, that number should have been 7,150.
Okay,
Okay,
all right. And that's what you have proposed for this year? Okay.
yes. And again, our property and casualty insurance is part of the operating expenses, and they've been estimated with a 15% overage simply because I don't know, and that amounts to about $3,944 in this budget.
Okay.
So other than that, his maintenance of his equipment stayed the same. That's $66,000. Didn't have any kind of increases on anything else. There's nothing really there other than what we just pointed out.
Okay, so overall it's a 15% decrease.
Well, you'll see your total personnel and operating is a 3% increase.
Okay. But the total budget is being decreased by 15%.
It is, and what I'd like to say, I mean, I wish that, but that's
that's where
because
the-
we had $150,000 in the budget last year for capital purchases, and that's been taken out. So
Okay.
that's why the bottom line
Right,
there
but so overall
was-
total, you're saying is a 3% increase? Okay.
Right, when we get down to the meat of the budget,
And
which
that's
is the
with,
personnel
that's
and
with
operating.
using the projected expenses for insurance at the rate that you've got them at?
Yes.
It could be lower if the insurance comes in lower.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Is there any questions in regards to this?
Now, I do have, if you'll look down the transfer to capital reserves, I handed out a paper to you because this year we had budgeted 4 pieces of equipment in the golf course budget line. And when we talked about it at budget time, we weren't 100% sure that of which way the city manager and the golf director were going to go. So we included the cost of brand new equipment for these 4 items. So actually what ended up happening is they bought used equipment.
Right.
So the total cost of it was $74,460 for the 4 pieces of budgeted equipment. And when we thought about it, there are certain costs. If there was budgeted in here, we were going to get a loan. If we got brand new equipment, we were going to go out and get a loan for that, and that did not happen. So on November 20th last year, I came back to you and said that I didn't really feel that would be, since we didn't borrow 150, we only borrowed less than 75,000. That wasn't really a fiscally responsible thing to do. So we talked about how last year we increased the cart fees 10% for the golf course to help pay for the equipment. So basically it was almost $1, like $2, $1.81. Yeah, $1.81 for 18 holes and like 90 something for 9. So within our revenues, we felt like the users would pay that because there would be an increase. We talked about that during the last budget
Right.
workshop.
Right.
Right.
Okay, well, when we came back with the equipment at 75,000, we talked about needing some support for that and borrowing from ourselves instead of going out and spending the extra money on the cost of a loan. And that's
Right.
what we did. We agreed to make sure that the money was there to purchase the equipment, and we borrowed from the water sewer fund at that time. We borrowed half of it. So before you've got this equipment purchase where it talks about that. And this year, what we've done on November 20th, when I came to you, I talked about the capital improvement fees. We have, I think it's like $35,277 that's budgeted in this current fiscal year that would have been transferred to reserves. We already know at end of season, we have right at 30,000 that's there. Instead of transferring that to our reserves, we're going to support that equipment purchase with it, which is $30,000. Then I figured out the funding from the card increase, which is when we bought this equipment to begin with, that was what was going to support it, is we increased our cart fees. So at season end this year, with the increase, the actual increase represented $14,460. So that's what the sheet says before you, is that
Right.
right. And so then the additional would be the 30,000 from the water sewer. And what was agreed in November was that would be, we would make sure that was put back by the end of fiscal year 2019, which it will. And the funding for that, the second set of figures underneath, we know that we're going to have with the increase, providing everything is fine, we're going to have another $14,460 realized from that increase. And then with the capital improvement fees, we've budgeted, there's $33,450 in fiscal year 2019 that we are anticipating to bring in. So out of those, $15,540 will support that equipment purchase, and then the other $18,210 will be transferred to reserves.
To reserves.
That's what we felt would be the best way to handle that equipment purchase.
Right. And this is capital improvement fees and reserve under the capital improvement for the budget for the golf course, because this is a fee that the golfer, 10% fee that came in.
The players
Pay for the 10, right? 100% paid by the players. But this goes back to, I don't remember,
2007, I believe,
Okay.
is when that we.
All right.
we set
I couldn't remember
aside-
when it was, but I knew that it was a 10% capital improvement fee that was being paid by the players.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And currently, and we have a 5-year plan. I also need to give that to you as well. But those improvement fees, we have reserves that represent them. And right now, because what we've talked about with this sheet of paper, those are current cap fees. So we're not really touching the reserves of the general fund. Those are within our budgets.
Right.
Okay.
So it just won't be a transfer that will go into a savings, so to speak.
Right.
It will just support
Pay it off.
that purchase. So roughly right now in our golf course reserves, we've got about $61,000.
Okay.
And those are, again, like you said, they're all user fees.
And then we'll be adding the 18,310 to it.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Yes, we will.
So in 2019's budget, we'll pay off the equipment.
From last year.
Water, sewer. And I do want to point out that we did in November, we didn't really know what we were going to do. I just know that with that amount of money, it didn't make sense to go and try to get that from a bank.
Right.
So we could have, the general fund, the current 2018 budget would have been fine with that. The only thing is, we really wanted to point out the fact that it is user fees that are paying for this equipment, because that's how it was presented last year. So we didn't want to mix it when we talk about contingency within our budget, because
Right,
as you
for
know,
fidelity, you
the
need to keep it.
contingency is what helps you not spend as much money. You know, that's like your little reserve there on the side, and we didn't want to start talking about that and have people say, well, you know, we're supporting using contingency funds
Right.
for that.
Right.
Because all along we realized even though our play is down, had we not had the increase in the cart fees to pay for the equipment, you know, we wouldn't have as much revenue. And when I reviewed it, we do have, you know, the revenue at the end of season, at the end of April, there is $14,460 that I can safely contribute to that increase.
Okay,
Great.
okay. And you said there was 61,000 in the golf course reserves right now?
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay. Was that a question? Okay.
I've seen this over the years at the county where they borrow from one budget borrows from various parts of the others, but it was done very much openly. Darrell was the one who started it. And every year he would remind everyone that last year we agreed that we were going to borrow from the hurricane fund to put it someplace else and that we're going to pay it back within a certain amount of time. It was all very loudly proclaimed
Right.
at the beginning and the end of the year. This is almost like sleight of hand cards.
No,
Really,
not
you
at,
have
not
to,
at all. And
Yeah,
I
well,
remember
do you actually remember this stuff at the end of the year? Does anybody ever mention it
Yes,
again?
we do. May I
yeah,
say?
absolutely. And I remember the discussion you're talking about that I spoke up as a county commissioner saying, and remember, folks, this is a non-reoccurring cash account that's being dwindled away.
A lot
So
over
that
the
was me
years.
that said that. So I'm the same guy that's overseeing this budget, and I can tell you right now, there's no sleight of hand going on here.
Yeah. Sherry, go ahead. You said wanted to
Well,
say
I
something.
just wanted to point out to you that it's in the minutes. I've got it here. I can plainly get you a copy of it. November the 20th, 2017, we talked about it. The commission discussed this last year at the budget workshops. They discussed purchasing this equipment with the understanding that the cart fee increase was going to support the budget. And I will say to you, when we have an audit, as part of the auditor's job that he does, no matter who it is, they go through the minutes of your meeting. So we did discuss this in the minutes, and what they're going to look for is the entry that you have.
Amen.
And that's exactly why we put it on the books from the Water Sewer Fund, because we will actually have an entry and we'll have to write that when we pay it back. Which, yes, if I am responsible for it, I can guarantee you the $30,000 will be back into the reserves to the water sewer.
I second that.
Okay.
But it is pointed out, that's the first thing they're gonna look for is say, oh, we noticed this in the minutes, where is this
And
entry?
you've always been very clear about that, and it's always been presented to us.
Yeah, when we have to go out and get these simple loans for equipment every now and then, just as we did for the police cars, there's a cost associated with that loan that we're trying to avoid, and it can go up to $10,000-$12,000 in bank fees and attorney fees just for us to get the loan. So we borrowed it from ourselves, and we will pay that money back.
Right. And this is
If-
$30,000 we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And it's not over a period of time.
This is from-
Sometimes when
One
we
year to the next.
discussed this in the past, there's been certain instances that have come up where,
Fire
I'm
trucks,
sorry?
like the fire trucks.
Yeah, there is revenue that's going to put this back, and it's going to be handled in the very next fiscal year. It's not like it's going to be spread out over time and just dwindle on, and that's why I personally felt comfortable with that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sherry. Jerry, you have a question?
A question and a statement, if I could. That's the reason we need to keep the millage where it is, so we've got a little breathing room when these emergencies come up. We don't have to borrow money from ourselves. We've got it in reserve. Help me out on this budget. We've suggested proposed income of about $556 and change. Is that correct?
Yes,
And expenses of $827 and change.
yes.
So that leaves us about $270, more than $270,000 in the hole that we're using to offset. We're using city tax dollars to keep the golf course running. Is that correct?
$271,603.
Well, I'm up here every year. That's one of the 800-pound gorillas, and I was told that we're going to address that this year. And I like the city manager's statement about folks, you set the millage, and we're gonna make it work. I think it's about time we start doing that with the golf course. Folks, you got this much money. Y'all figure out how to run it. We're not giving you any more. We've got to start reducing that number. We're a city of 6,500 people. We're running a golf course here for 100 members and
198 others. But there's
90 short-term memberships.
right 190 short.
And I don't want to see the golf course closed down. I think it does, we look at all these tournaments that are run, it does a lot of good for the community. If you need to run a fundraiser in the city, you got but one choice, the golf course. You can't do it off of a car wash or anything.
Right.
So we need to keep it open, but we got to reduce these expenses, in my opinion.
And Jerry, I know that over the years we have. I know some years, many years back, when before
When I moved here, it was
before-
$800,000 plus.
Yeah, before the recession, and there was funds there. But I think one of the things that we have to look at is that if you look at our parks and recreation, if you look at our softball fields, I don't know off the top of my head what those cost the city, but I know that they're more than $270,000. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
The running the parks and running our facilities.
Yes.
I mean, it is part of running a town. It's part of that we do have a golf course, and I agree. We need to always be more efficient. There's no doubt about it. And this is just them presenting the budget to us, and us looking at it, and that to see if there's things that we can do better. And again, this includes for this year, which we don't have the answer yet, but we hope that we can adjust the numbers to on behalf of the city, is that Sherry on this budget and all the budgets that she's presented us by department, she's got a 20% health insurance increase, a 15% workman's comp increase, and estimated over $15,000 for property casualty. Now, the bottom line might not be that $600 that you're saying. It might be. I'm hoping it's going to be less, and we can always be more efficient. So I'm not going to argue with you that we should try to reduce.
I'm not trying to argue.
Yeah,
I'm just pointing out that
all the things, but I don't know at what point completely cutting off and saying to the well, we can't do it. I mean, there's no recreational facility in the city of Clewiston. This is the least expensive one from all the recreational facilities that we have in the city, because there is revenue, correct? I mean, the softball fields, was it over $1 million?
No.
No, tell me again. Parks and recreation and softball fields.
It's between $800,000 and $900,000.
Okay, just to run the baseball
total
fields.
recreation.
Total recreation.
look
Okay.
at the number of participants, though. Okay.
Well, in the
I
summertime,
don't want
yes.
to beat the point to
No,
death.
no.
I just
And I could, but I think it's all part of. And I'm not going to say more because it's. We can be more efficient overall. There's no doubt about it.
folks, y'all cut it about as hard to the bone as you can, I think. I don't know if there's a whole lot more to cut and a whole lot more to make it
Yeah.
efficient. That's the reason I pleaded with you about increasing the millage last year, to give yourself just a little bit of, and I think it's worked out. You've
Right.
got a little bit more breathing room this year. If I may, I'm going to be gone for the next two council meetings. I'm going to be out of town for the next two council meetings and budget hearings. But one point I would like to make is that y'all are no different than any other city council in the state. You've got a wish list of things that you would like to do, and you've got this amount of money to do with it. And at some point, you've got to say, well, that's a really good project, but we can't afford it.
Right.
And we can't afford it. You can't do everything that you want to.
And what we've been doing over the last several years is that all the capital all the requests, there's an entire list that we receive at the very end, and this is what we have. And
You got to start picking
what
and
can we do?
choosing. Okay.
And so,
When you get-
yes, I agree.
When you get to picking and choosing, two things that I would like at the very top of the list. When you drive down 27, it looks like a little bit of a distressed area. And it is. We've got some empty buildings. We've got some buildings in poor shape.
Mm-hmm.
Two things that we need to do. Y'all are talking about increasing the budget for resurfacing of roads back to where it used to. Folks, inflation's eating away at 10 years. We're taking in pretty close to $400,000 or so in gasoline tax. I'd like to see the great bulk of that. We don't need to restore the levels. We need to exceed those levels and start doing some catch up for the next 5 or 6 years. At the rate that y'all are doing it, $200,000 a year or so, it's going to take you over 30 years to get everything in the city resurfaced. And we know roads don't last 30 years. So I would like to see if y'all can't work a little bit and use as much of that gas tax money as possible to resurface roads.
Right.
The-
And I know that in looking at that and resurfacing the roads, that don't forget that we're getting ready to, the county's going to do W.C. Owen, South Francisco, and Sonora. I mean, even though they're within the city limits, those are county roads.
Understand.
And that they're getting ready to do those. Sherry, do you want to, I know Jerry's brought up the gas taxes or anything that you want to talk about? I know we went over that budget already. Were you here that night?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay.
I understand that.
We're actually proposing a bigger, a larger amount this year. We'll see if it sticks through our wish list, but.
Okay.
it's
Over
proposed-
200,000,
Over
like
200,000,
215,000
yeah.
or something. Incremental.
That's a
I know.
pretty minimal amount for the amount of roads we got, 30-some miles, I think, I was told.
Yeah.
The second thing is, request made for a full-time assistant to the code enforcement officer. And she made the mark last meeting, I could walk out of here and find 50 violations in 5 minutes. There's 6 violations on the street that I live on, and that's one of the nicer sections of the city. Six blatant violations. One person cannot keep up with it. You hire a part-time person, they're going to, as soon as they get trained, they're probably looking for a full-time job because everybody needs to work. So I would strongly recommend and hope that you follow through to get. I think we've got a pretty good code enforcement officer, but there's only so many hours in the day. To give her a full-time assistant, let her get trained, let her do some of that paperwork, and get her trained to get out here and make violations. It's going to take us 10 years to catch up. We are so far behind the curve, it's unbelievable. And I think we need to be sending a message to the public that Mrs. Smith mentioned a code violation on our street about, possible property line violation. Well, the reason he didn't get caught because the guy never pulled a building permit. We need to be out there and code enforcement.
Was that recently though? That wasn't.
Oh
recent-
yeah,
no.
very recently.
Was it recently?
Yeah, and the stop order was put on it, and it went ahead anyhow. But there's a limit on how much you do. That's why we need to send a message to not only the citizens but
Right.
people driving through our community that we want to make our community a little more attractive. And that's one way to do it is to clear up these blatant code violations and change some of the directions about what color you can paint a building. And if you're going to leave a building, and it's like forgiving a code violation, we forgive a fine. If I'm sitting in your position, we told you about this, we can send you certified letters, we're not waiving a nickel of that fine. $60,000, that's what you owe us. You can either pay us or we put in a lien on your property. We'll get the money someday. We're not waiving it back to $20,000 or $10,000 or magistrate or anything else. We got to be serious about this. Either we're serious about it or we're not. And I hope that y'all will, look at more than Al suggested, maybe like 300,000 on roads, and try and do some serious catch up, and give this lady some help in code enforcement because y'all live here in the city. You see code enforcement. You can't drive 3 blocks without. That's a violation. It may not be a major infraction. It may be a hedge that's 12 feet high instead of what's permissible.
I understand that.
But a violation is a violation. You can't wink and nod at one violation and then go back and be serious about something else. You got to enforce the law equally.
Okay.
Thank you for your time and good
thank-
luck with the budget.
Okay, thanks,
Mayor.
Sherry. Yes, sir.
Can I go back? I want to just make a point since going back to the golf course subsidy. 5 years ago when I started, the subsidy was $416,000 or $418,000. Last year in 2017, it was $200,345. So that's a drastic change in the right direction. Now we're down to a skeleton crew that anytime anybody wants to go out there and see what those folks do for a living, they work all day, every day. And, it's difficult with Robbie with vacation schedules, balancing how many people are allowed to go at one time and just having enough people to man it. But I think the staff's done a tremendous job of cutting that budget down to, where it needs to get or better.
And Cal wasn't being critical.
No, I understand.
The deficit was
I understand.
anybody's hard work or dedication or anything else.
I just gave this to our advisory board a month ago. That's why I could remember those numbers. So
Okay. And then I think the advisory.
We plateaued out about where we are.
I think so.
Yeah. And I know I just want to also mention just that we do have an advisory board and they're volunteers and I appreciate their love of the golf course and making recommendations. So I know we're looking at adding some more members on there. Sherry, is there anything on the golf course budget? Anything else that we want you to talk about? Or Robbie, is there anything else that you want to mention about it? Okay. And there's not any capital improvement requests for this year? Did I miss that?
Right.
Okay,
No.
all right, okay, all right.
And
Okay.
one thing,
Yes,
since the roads got brought up, WC Owens is getting done this year. Francisco's next year. And then
Probably, yes.
Sonora's
Yes.
2020. Did anybody get with, I know I asked in the one meeting, I don't know if Sean done it, got with the county and asked them if they could do North Francisco
I
with
think-
South Francisco?
I think we got that backwards. I think Francisco is going to be done this year. WCO, and last time, a month ago or so, when I gave the update, was 60% plans were complete. So that'll probably be next year. Francisco's this year. They awarded the bid on Francisco already.
Okay.
Okay, and we did have a discussion with the county, and in fact, the county, the county wants to give the roads back, all the roads back to Clewiston. And so,
Why not?
so those are ongoing conversations, and I know that, I was gonna talk to Charles about them, about, following up from our meeting that we had with them. So,
And maybe we request them do other roads for us taking
Right.
these roads. You know, it's a,
well, those are county,
They're
I mean,
county roads.
they're collector
Yeah.
roads, so I just don't see how we could, there's not, we haven't received a formal request, have we? Okay, so, I don't know if we will, I know it's been a discussion item, but, the majority of the people that used, South Francisco, WCO and the Sonora, are doing so from, I would believe,
County
outside the county
communities.
coming in, yeah, and going back out.
and there's some conversations I'd like to have with the county too. So
Okay.
hopefully that'll happen in the future and
Okay,
work together.
absolutely. All right, is there anything else? Any other comments? Okay, all right, we'll go ahead and call the workshop adjourned. Oh, I'm sorry, Sherry, real quick, what's the next workshop and what are we gonna be discussing?
Hopefully, we will get through all of the general fund, and we'll have the list that we talk about.
Okay,
We'll have our numbers in. It's July 31st,
okay,
and I believe we set it for 4 p.m.
When do we go to the police department?
That'll be then,
Then,
yes.
okay. All right, so July 31st at 4 p.m.
Yes.
Okay, that's a Tuesday. All right, thank you, we are adjourned.
It's my granddaughter's birthday.